Hello. This week I want to talk about Part 1 in Project 1 for EDU525. On the left, I already have up the Project 1 instructions and rubric. If you scroll down the page, the first thing you're going to have to do is go to Supporting Materials because you're going to have to open, download, and utilize the Project 1 parameters template. And more importantly, you need to access the Project 1 student profile data. So I want to click on that first. Inside of the student profile data, you are given data for a class set of 40 students, and it's broken down into different needs. One is educational supports, and then you have learning preferences, learning constraints, cultural characteristics, and other characteristics. And then on the right, you see some results that give statistical information about the breakdown of the students in this pretend course. So what you're going to be doing in Project 1 is you're going to use your own subject matter knowledge for the subject you teach and pretend that these 40 students are enrolled in your course you teach. And so you're going to be working to meet their individual needs. So let's get back to the directions and what to submit. I want to go straight to what to submit first. And so part 1 is the student profile data. And it says you'll write a paper that summarizes your analysis of the student profile data set provided for you in the supporting materials section and conclusions you've drawn about the needs and abilities of the students based on the data and UDL and UBD frameworks. Okay? So it does say that you must include the project parameters, and it does talk about it being 3 to 5 pages. We are not focused primarily on the length of the paper. What we're focused on is that you cover all the pieces. So if you go back to the last part of the first sentence, it says conclusions you've drawn about the needs and abilities of the students based on the data. So with this, part 1 is not just creating a narrative of the same data you've already been given, but you're going to add that narrative first. You're going to talk about what the research says and then talk about how you would implement that in your classroom. So if we go on down to, go back up to the directions, you'll see that there's a bulleted list for part 1 that starts with an overview. You have an introduction. Then you have an analysis section that should be broken down into 4 parts, and they include documented educational supports, and it talks about IEPs 504, another section learning preferences, another one cultural characteristics, and then finally other characteristics. So that is part of the analysis. So analysis would be the heading, subheadings would be those 4 bullet points, and then you have a next section which would have a main heading, and that are the conclusions. And inside of there is where you're going to talk about universal design for learning principles and understanding by design, or UBD. So in order to kind of go over all this, on the right I have a sample project submission of part 1 for project 1 that I would like to go through and show you what we're really looking for. So before I get started with showing the student example, I do want to preface this with you need to make sure that you are writing everything in your own words and completing your own work. If you decide to try to grab a lot of the information that you're going to see in the example I'm going to show and submit it as your own, the Turnitin software will capture that. It will flag it as copied from another student's paper, and then we'll have to have another discussion on that. So I am showing you this student project in an effort to kind of give you show you the expectations of what we're looking for to get full credit for part 1 of project 1. So it does start out with a title page based on APA formatting, and then as you scroll down you'll see the completed project parameters template. And so you can have some bulleted items at the top when you're talking about the type of school and type of online, level, subject. And then when you get to the course name and brief description, notice there's a decent length of description for the course, and especially the subject or topic you'll be covering in this particular lesson. So you're making up a mock lesson, but I want to get down to the analysis section. Notice how I said that the analysis would be a heading and then the other pieces would be subheadings. I also want to note how this student broke that documented educational supports section down into subsections and included one on IEPs, one on 504 plans, and one on gifted students. The other thing I want to point out is notice that each of those individual sections has information about the data that was contained in the profile, but it also has citations to credible resources and their explanations within the section of specific items to take into consideration as you teach your subject content. And the same thing goes all the way down through. So you have your documented educational support section, you have your in-text citations following APA format, and there's a variety of citations used throughout. It's not the same citation. You move down the next one, learning preferences, that's there, and now that's broken down into learning styles, physical constraints, English language learners, and so forth. And then you get to cultural characteristics, and that is broken down into socioeconomic situation, religion, and non-US born citizens, expats, and then you finally get to other characteristics. Now notice again, as we go down through, each section and each subsection has plenty of resources that are used. Now, when it comes to the cultural characteristics, when it comes to the 4 bullet points, you will have the same subsections in your paper. I'm not looking for you to have the additional subsections. You'll want to write this based on your own findings and your own personal preference. But you do want to include the level of citations, the diversity of citations that all follow APA formatting throughout each section. And then when you get to the end, you get to a conclusion, and I'm okay if you break it down into separate sections, one for UDL or Universal Design for Learning. Again, that has citations. It's tied back to the data that you explained up above in the analysis section. Same thing for UBD or Universal or Understanding by Design. So you're going to, in your submission, you should have this level of detail. And of course, this stretches over the 3 to 5 page limit, but it in detail covers all of the items that are required. And then you can see there's some additional conclusions at the end that kind of ties it all back together. And that part even has citations. So you want to make sure that A, you include the section headers, B, you include the information that is presented in the student profile data, C, you include citations to go along with how you would support that. That's that part of developing conclusions. And then you provide a statement or two in there about how you would address that specifically in your own online classroom. And that is how you meet the requirements for Part 1 of Project 1.